Hey, good morning. This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, coming to you live from the Jersey Shore this weekend. We're bringing you the Bennies Bad section today to go over some of the hitters that are in the best spots. What we like to do is highlight the pitchers that are going up on the mound today, figure out what their weaknesses are, and try to see which hitter's profile to do the best against them. The first guy we're going to talk about today is going to be Kyle Kendrick. Kyle Kendrick is in Colorado going up against Cincinnati. He's basically been bad to the hitters from both sides of the plate. Right-handed bats have hit .292 against him with 14 home runs and 59 innings of work. And left-handed bats have hit .310 against him with 10 home runs and 48 innings of work. So there's a lot of guys on that Cincy team that are going to be in play today. Some of the ones that stand out the best against right-handed pitching, Joey Votto has a .416 WOBA with a .252 ISO number. Todd Frazier has a .371 WOBA with a .255 ISO number. Those are the two expensive options that you really want to make sure you take a look at today. A couple of the cheaper guys that make some sense. Ivan DeJesus is a .368 WOBA with a .161 ISO number. And Eugenio Suarez has a .360 WOBA with a .155 ISO number. Even guys like Jay Bruce with his home run power, or Marlon Byrd, or other guys that you can look at as well. Stacking up that Cincinnati team playing in Colorado today is going to be a popular choice, and definitely something that you have to consider with your rosters. Next guy we're going to talk about is Shane Green. Shane Green's going up against Boston today. Left-handed batters are hitting .354 against him with the whip of 1.96. That means you can look at a guy like David Ortiz, who's probably the top option. He's got a .383 WOBA with a .259 ISO number. Alejandro De Aza is a .384 WOBA with a .213 ISO number. So those are the two guys that really stand out. If you're looking for a couple cheaper options, you could also take a look at a guy like Brock Holt. His numbers aren't that great so far this year against right-handed pitching, but Shane Green has been bad enough that any one of those lefties on Boston is going to be in play. Next guy we can talk about is Matt Moore. Matt Moore is a lefty going up against the Baltimore Orioles today. Basically, in a small sample size since he's come off the DL, everybody's hitting over 300 against him. He's actually given up about a .333 batting average to both sides of the plate at the moment. A couple guys who do very well against left-handed pitching on Baltimore. The top option is going to be Adam Jones. He has a .398 WOBA with a .254 ISO number, so he's going to be the guy who is probably the top bet for you. His price is actually pretty cheap. I think he's only about $3,000 over on FanDuel, so I think he's in a great spot today and has a lot of upside for you in your rosters. You can also look at Manny Machado leading off for the Orioles. He's been on fire since they put him in the leadoff spot. He's got a .382 WOBA with a .203 ISO number. So he's another guy that can get you some hits and also hit for some power. And the last guy, even though it's a lefty-lefty matchup, Chris Davis has a .366 WOBA with a .226 ISO number against left-handed pitching on the year. So he hasn't been horrible against lefties. And the way Moore's been pitching, like I said, basically everybody on that Baltimore team is going to be in play. Next guy we can look at is Michael Lorenzen for Cincinnati. He has allowed left-handed bats to hit .313 against him with a whip of 1.99, 6 home runs allowed, and 27 innings of work. That means that the left-handed bats on Colorado are going to be guys that you can use. A guy like Charlie Blackmon, .389 WOBA, .354 ISO number. So he's been hitting for power as well as average. Steals a couple bases for you. He's very expensive today on the day. But again, the matchup is pretty elite for him, so it makes a little bit of sense. Carlos Gonzalez has been absolutely on fire lately. 3 home runs in his last 3 games, .389 WOBA, .310 ISO number. So he's another guy that you have to consider. Again, he's not cheap. They're playing in Coors Field. Tough to fit these guys into your roster, but you know the matchup basically screams that there's somebody that you want to use if you can fit him in. Last guy to look at too, Corey Dickerson came back off the DL. He has a .376 WOBA and a .243 ISO number against right-handed pitching. So all 3 of those guys are going to be 3 of the big bats that you can use. None of them are cheap. They're all going to cost you. You're going to have to pay up for them. It's going to be tough to stack them, but the entire outfield there for Colorado should be guys that are in play. Next guy we could talk about is Matt Garza. Garza has allowed left-handed batters to hit .292 against him with 8 home runs and 51 innings pitched. And right-handed batters are hitting .299 against him with 9 home runs and 54 innings pitched. So you can basically look at Arizona bats from the right or the left side today. Guy who profiles well against right-handed pitching is Paul Goldschmidt. He has a .432 WOBA with a .248 ISO number. He's 7 for his last 19 with 8 walks over his last 6 games. He hasn't been giving you the huge upside because they've basically been pitching around him. But, he's definitely been giving you good value if you want to use him in your cash games. The other 2 guys that you can look at are David Peralta and A.J. Pollock. Peralta is the lefty, so he's the guy who probably profiles better. But he got injured the other day and still doesn't really completely look right at the plate. I think I'd rather use a guy like Pollock. Pollock's averaged over 11 DraftKings points in his last 4 games. 7 of his last 15. He's got a couple RBIs, a couple stolen bases, a couple runs scored. He's just a really, really solid option, and I think that Arizona team's in a pretty good spot today. So he's somebody that you can look at as well. Next guy we'll talk about is Nick Martinez. He's going up against the Los Angeles Angels. He's allowed right-handed bats to hit .311 against them with 7 home runs and 50 innings pitched. So that basically puts the 2 main bats for the Angels in play. You got a guy like Trout, who's got a .418 WOBA with a .295 ISO number. You got a guy like Pujols, who has a .388 WOBA with a .296 ISO number. It's been absolutely smashing right-handed pitching all season. Has a lot of home run power. Those are the 2 guys who I really think you should look at. But again, they're both righties going up in a righty-righty matchup. They're both expensive today, so you're not going to be able to get a discount on either one of these guys. But Nick Martinez has been that bad that I think both of these guys are going to be in play and make for solid options. Next guy you can look at is a guy like Tim Hudson going up against Oakland. Hudson has allowed left-handed bats to knock him around a little bit this year. .314 batting average with a 1.74 whip. So that puts 2 guys who haven't really been killing it lately, but 2 guys with good numbers are Stephen Vogt and Josh Reddick. Vogt's got a .384 WOBA with a .231 ISO number. Reddick's got a .384 WOBA with a .202 ISO number. So while it's not a great hitter's park and Hudson's not a guy who gives up a ton of home runs, those are the 2 guys who actually profile best against them. They're cheap, so that's why I wanted to make sure I included them for you. If you're looking for some cheap options, I think both of those guys have a good chance to put in a good game today. Let's see. The next guy we can talk about is Aaron Nola going up against the Chicago Cubs. Nola's a rookie for the Phillies, making only his 2nd start. There's not a lot to go on because he only made 1 start in the majors. But if you look back at his minor league numbers for AAA, he allowed left-handed bats to hit .286 against them with a whip of 1.50 and 3 homers allowed in only 15 innings. And the reason that's important is there's a couple of those left-handed bats on Chicago that I think you can look at. The top one on the list is Kyle Schwarber. Schwarber should be in the game today. He has a .516 WOBA so far and a .342 ISO number in his limited time in the major leagues. So he has absolutely been killing right-handed pitching, and he's somebody that I definitely think you got to consider. The other guy you can take a look at is Anthony Rizzo. Rizzo is a .382 WOBA number with a .251 ISO number. So he has some power as well, and obviously has been a consistent hitter and a guy who consistently gets on base throughout the course of his career. Next guy we'll talk about is Yordano Ventura. Ventura has struggled with left-handed bats this year. It's allowed them to hit .284 with 5 home runs and 38 innings of work. So the one guy who really stands out on that Houston team, the only left-handed bat I really like on Houston, is the rookie Preston Tucker. Tucker's got a .404 WOBA with a .285 ISO number. So this is a guy that's been showing some tremendous power as well as been able to get on base, and the .404 WOBA is an elite level number. So when you have him going up against the right-handed pitcher, those are some pretty good stats that you want to look at. He homered in his 2nd at-bat against the righty the other day, and whenever they do face against these righties, he usually finds himself sandwiched in the 2-hole between Jose Altuve and Carlos Correa, which helps him see a lot more fastballs, a lot better pitches to hit. Next guy we can talk about is Jeremy Hellickson. Hellickson's in that game in Arizona going up against Milwaukee. Left-handed bats have really knocked him around. They got a .291 average this year with a whip of 1.63. Although he hasn't given up a ton of home runs, only 4 home runs in 42 innings pitched to lefties, he's actually given up 10 home runs in 59 innings to righties. So lefties are hitting him for average, righties are hitting him for power. There's a big problem today with Milwaukee because Adam Lynn got banged up yesterday, and it looks like he's going to be out today. So that takes one of those big left-handed bats that you would want to use out of the lineup. You can use a guy like Gerardo Parra, though. Parra has a .370 WOBA with a .189 ISO number. Should be on top of the order for them, and is definitely somebody who I think is going to be in play. Next guy we can talk about is Taijuan Walker. Taijuan Walker has fallen on some hard times lately. In his last 3 starts, over 15.1 innings pitched, he's given up 20 hits and 18 runs. A couple of them were unearned, but still, 18 runs is 18 runs, especially over the last 15 innings. Now, he had been better at home, but a couple of those starts were at home as well, and he's still getting knocked around. Toronto, as we know, has one of the highest, team batting averages, team WOBA, runs scored. I mean, if you look at every offensive category, Toronto's up there, whether it's against a righty or a lefty. So I definitely think this is not a great matchup for Walker today. He's allowed right-handed bats to hit 282 against him this year with a 1.43 whip and 10 home runs in 42 innings pitched. The 2 guys who I think really stand out against the righty, based on the advanced metrics, Joey Bautista has a 382 WOBA with a 293 ISO number. So he's been hitting for average and power against right-handers, and I think he's going to be in a good spot today, even though it is a tough hitter's ballpark up at Safeco. The other guy you could look at is Josh Donaldson. He's got a 364 WOBA with a 223 ISO number. So both of those guys are in a good spot today against a struggling Walker. We can look at Matt Whistler from Atlanta. In the minor leagues, he allowed left-handed bats to hit 315 against him. So that means that you got guys like Colton Wong and Matt Carpenter who are probably going to be in play today for the Cardinals. Now, again, these guys are more cash game plays. They don't have the huge upside that you really look for. They're not guys that are going to go out and smash a bunch of home runs for you, but they would make solid options if you're looking for some cash game plays. Guys that can get a couple hits, get on base, maybe pick up an RBI or 2 and score a couple runs. Against right-handed pitching, you tend to see both of them towards the top of the order. And I think that St. Louis is in line to score a couple runs today off the young rookie. Let's see. We got Eduardo Rodriguez, another rookie, going up today against Detroit. He was very good up until his last start. He's had 2 bad starts this year. And the word is that there's something in his delivery when he's in the stretch that he's tipping his pitches. It was definitely seen last game against the Los Angeles Angels. Whatever it was, the Angels picked up on it early because they pounded out about 6 or 7 runs against them in about an inning and a half. The one guy who I really like on Detroit is Jose Iglesias, the shortstop. He's got a 431 WOBA against left-handed pitching so far this year. He's also been a guy who's been racking up the hits lately. So I think he makes a good salary-saving option at shortstop for you. Definitely a great cash game play. He's a guy who can get you a couple hits. Doesn't have a lot of power, doesn't steal a lot of bases, doesn't drive in a lot of runs. But if he can rack up 2 or 3 hits for you, he's going to get you good value, especially at his cheap price. The other guy you can look at is Victor Martinez. He does have a 424 WOBA against left-handed pitching, so he's another guy that's definitely in play. Let's see. Next guy we can look at is Kyle Gibson against the New York Yankees. Right-handed bats are hitting 275 against him with 7 home runs and 60 innings pitched. A-Rod had a 3-home-run game yesterday, and he's the guy who profiles best against Gibson. 378 WOBA, 232 ISO score. Those are some elite numbers for a guy like Alex Rodriguez. And he's a lot cheaper than the options like Arenado and Frazier, who a lot of people are talking about. Both of them in that Coors Field game today. Let's see. We got Mark Burley going up for Toronto. Burley has allowed right-handed bats to hit 269 against them, but only 5 home runs and 90 innings pitched. So he's not a guy that guys have been taking yard. Nelson Cruz, though, does have elite numbers against left-handed pitching. He has a 502 WOBA with a 360 ISO score. So, it's basically one of those things where, Burley doesn't give up a lot of home runs, but Nelson Cruz has been smashing them against lefties. So I think that Cruz is going to be somebody who could be in play. I don't know if I would really love him for a home run today, but I think he'll still be able to pick up a couple hits, basically probably a couple walks, because I have a feeling that Burley's going to try to pitch around them and attack some of those lefties a little bit more. Let's see. The last guy we're going to talk about today is Wei-Yin Chen. Chen is going up against Tampa Bay. Right-handed bats are only hitting 240 against him. Chen's actually been pretty good this year, but he's been prone to the home run. He's given up 14 home runs in 86 innings pitched against right-handed bats. So the one guy who really stands out to me that I really like today, second base option, is Logan Forsythe. He has a 403 WOBA with a 304 ISO score against left-handers. So he's somebody that I think can actually get a hold of one and take Chen yard. And if he does at a cheap price, he's going to give you a big upside. You could also look at Steven Souza Jr., 379 WOBA, 250 ISO score. He makes a little bit of sense. And even Evan Longoria has a 380 WOBA. So that gives you a rundown of some of the guys that we really like today. There are a lot of good pitching options up top. You got guys like Greinke and Cole. Jacob deGrom is on the mound today. One guy who I also think you guys should really look at is Andrew Heaney. He's going up against that Texas team. Texas has 7th highest strikeout rate and the 6th lowest batting average against left-handed pitching. And Heaney's been really, really good since they called him up about a month ago. So he's another guy that I think is going to be in play. He's the cheap option for pitching that I really like today. So that completes our rundown of the Bennies Bad section for today. Gives you guys a little bit of an outline of some of the guys who are in the best spots. And remember, these aren't the only guys that you can use or the only guys you should have in your roster. These are the guys that you should be looking to build your roster around. These are the targets, the guys who are in the best spots. So figure out which of these guys you like the best and build your rosters around them. When lineups come out later, make sure you add in some of those cheaper bats, to make sure that everything fits together and works for you. There's a lot of upside today. There's a lot of games. And remember, everything locks today at 1 o'clock Eastern time, right around noon. So make sure you get those rosters in early. Thank you guys for joining us again here for the Bennies Bad section at rotocurve.com. And as always, stay classy, DFS.